She's feisty, she's funny, and she tells it like it is. Get ready for Empower Readings with Corbie Mitleid. What are your opportunities right now? What are the possibilities? Ask Corbie and cross the bridge from fear to fearlessness and fly. Here's your host, Corbie Mitleid.
If you're listening to my voice, then you made it through the Superstorm, and I'm so glad you're here. Hi, this is Corbie Mitleid, and on Empower Readings, the first Monday of the month, we tend to make that open mic night. Now, that means that if you've got any kind of a question, you can certainly ask it. Remember, it's pretty much anything but mediumship because I saved that for one-on-ones. But what I'd really like to talk about tonight, if y'all are up for it, and if there are some people that can join in with us, is that storm. You know, they're calling it Superstorm, they're calling it Stormzilla, they're calling it all kinds of idiot things. But the most important thing is it's bigger than anything else we've ever seen. Or as Mel Brooks said on The 2,000-Year-Old Man, it's something bigger than film. So tonight what I'd like to do is, if you were affected, if you know someone who was affected, call in and talk to us. We very much want to find out what you think it means, anything like that at all. Some people are saying it's Armageddon. Some people are saying it's the end of the world. Some people are saying it's merely global warming. Some people are saying Mother Nature is not amused. So what's your take? First thing I want to talk about is Hurricane Sandy by the numbers, which was posted on Facebook by the very, very good people at the Southern New England Weather Coverage. And this is from Dr. Jeff Masters from Weather Underground. Death toll, 160, 88 in the U.S., 54 in Haiti, 11 in Cuba. Damage estimate between 10 and 55 billion. Power outages, 8.5 million U.S. customers, the second most for a natural disaster behind the 1993 blizzard, which had 10 million. Maximum U.S. sustained winds, 69 miles an hour, westerly Rhode Island. Peak U.S. wind gusts, 90 miles an hour at Islip, New York, and Tompkinsville, New Jersey. Maximum U.S. storm surge, 9.5 feet at Bergen Point. Maximum U.S. storm tide, 14.5 feet at Bergen Point. And on and on and on and on. It's breaking all kinds of records. It is truly something that is staggering. But, you know, an awful lot of people are going to say, well, yeah, it was terrible, and they're going to put it behind them. The way a lot of people put Irene and Lee behind them. Even though up here in Schoharie County, we were lucky this time. It was as if the universe said, you know, we really put it to you with Irene and Lee, so we're going to give you a pass. Basically, where I live in the Schoharie Valley, it was untouched. We didn't even in Seaside Heights, New Jersey. She now owns what she was able to carry out in a small suitcase. Her house was obliterated, her business gone. And this is a woman like me in her 50s. To start over. So the big question is, why? At the same time, we're going to hitch up our britches. We're going to get it all back together. We're America. We all stand together and all of that stuff. Though I really must give a kudo and shout out to Governor Chris Christie of New Jersey, who totally put politics aside, so rare these days, and gave kudos to the president, who came right down and dumped his election stuff for a couple of days because this is where he was needed. This is, as they say, being presidential. So what does it mean? There are an awful lot of people who say it's global warming. At the same time, there are people who say it isn't. They say the climate is going through a warming cycle right now, and we're leaving a mini ice age. But that's not why we've seen more hurricanes affecting us. They think the steering patterns are starting to move back to what they were pre-1965. Pre-1965 saw hurricanes affecting us every 4 to 5 years ago, or years or so, and they're starting to see the pattern come back for the next 5 years. Just a trend. They don't think necessarily it's global warming, though I think that pretty much most of us agree something's going on. We have, of course, seen apparently both a rabbi and a pastor. I know this is not a joke. There's no way. Both say that this was God's wrath upon New York for the United States' awful, insert your thing here. I think both of them were about gay marriage. Somehow, I don't think that as far as the end of the world goes, well, my whole take on the Mayan calendar was they ran out of rock. But I do think that it is a wake-up call. There is something to be said about the changing of the ages. When we talk to my good buddy Sharita Starr, who is our lexigrammist and numerologist and astrologer, she is someone that talks about what it's like right now, how things are really changing. You've got a Mercury retrograde coming up. You've got planets being absolutely crazy with each other, oppositions and conjunctions and all kinds of things that don't work. And of course, the other thing that she did was I asked her, do me a favor, help me figure out what's going on with the hurricane. And she was able to get an awful lot of words out of the hurricane. Yeah, ruining haciendas, I think it was, something like that. And it was truly amazing to see how much stuff she was able to pull out of the name of the hurricane to give us a key to what was going on. I really wish that I could get Sharita to call in tonight, but I believe that she is working on a fund drive for her radio station, which is, of course, terribly important. So everyone is working on this. Everybody is trying to figure out what it meant. And I'm delighted to see that we've got a couple of callers, people that were in the midst of it. And the first one that I want to talk with is Reverend Sharon, fellow caller member, and she's calling from Northern Virginia. Sharon, glad to have you on the show.
Thank you, Corbie. It's good to be with you.
Now, what part of Virginia exactly are you in? Are you near a body of water? What's going on here?
Well, we live out in what is probably one of the worst named counties in the state of Virginia. It's named for an old Virginia family. It's Fauquier County. Sounds a little naughty sometimes when the locals say it fast.
I take it that it's not spelled that way?
No, it's Fauquier.
Oh, good.
And Fauquier County is out in what we call the rural northern Virginia, almost a suburbs. We have a lot of folks out here who work in D.C. but cannot afford to buy housing right in that immediate area because it's very expensive. So we have a lot of folks, myself included, who get up every morning at 100, drive into the city, do our tent maker jobs, and then also concentrate on our ministry during various times of the day when we can. Mm-hmm. We are near a body of water. It's the Rappahannock River, which would be immediately recognizable to any fan of the war between the states, or the Civil War, as they call it up your way.
Yes.
And the Rappahannock, among things that it is known for its very great ease in overflowing. We live in an alluvial plain that is east of the Blue Ridge Mountains. A glacier went through here a very long time ago, deposited a lot of stuff, and the Rappahannock literally bends all the way through it like a curlicue. When you follow it on the map, it's astonishing. So we were worried about it flooding, and we did get official warnings concerning it.
Mm-hmm. How badly were you yourself hit?
Well, we got a lot of the high winds. We got a lot of the rain, and because the water table is so odd here, the area basically gets ankle deep in mud if we get so much as a drizzle. Mm-hmm. So with all of the rain that got dumped on us between late Sunday all the way through Monday and into Tuesday, it was really tough going. It was not someplace where you wanted to casually be driving around, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And at the height of the storm, I believe sometime during the day or night on Monday, we only lost one little facing off the house, for which I heartily thank God and all the powers, because it could have been much, much worse. We have a very densely packed housing area in amongst farms, so a storm can blow across a farm area and then hit full force in an area where houses are very close together, and that's where the danger comes out in this kind of territory as opposed to the very closely packed houses closer to D.C.
Okay. Now, you were also affected by Irene?
We were to a certain extent, yes. The Rappahannock did its thing. It floods if you spit in it, so it ran over a little bit that time too. And we had constant rain for a couple of days, and we did get some wind, but nothing like what we had earlier this week.
Okay. Now, put your collar on for me. I know that a lot of your congregation is trying to figure out why, what did we do, what does it mean? What do you tell them?
Well, we have been talking about it quite a bit. A lot of folks tell me that during the storm and during the hours leading up to when it began to affect our area, which was late in the day on Sunday, they had a very strong feeling, it was almost a universal thing, that there was a lot of angry energy being released from somewhere. I'm not sure we have a consensus on where that energy was coming from, but it did feel very oppressive, you know, that sort of heavy feeling that you get just before a storm when, even if you haven't been out in the country in years, you just suddenly know something shifted somewhere.
Yes.
We got that in spades on Sunday afternoon. And you could just feel the barometric pressure drop. And there was no doubt, I mean, if you had no access to the NOAA site online or something to see the radar images, you just knew something was about to come through, and it was going to come through with the force of several freight trains. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, it would be interesting to talk to a ghost hunter to see if anyone's ever checked to see the little bit of space where they say they get a cold spot or EMF or whatever, if there's any kind of a barometric drop there. Because some storms, even if they're big rip snorters, they're fun, they're delicious, and it just feels like nature is having a party out there. This was not that.
Oh, yeah, this was definitely not a party.
Mm-mm. So what do you think whatever is angry out there wants to say?
Well, I've got a couple of theories, one of which it stems from my great love of history and my fascination particularly with the history of this area. It is the 150th anniversary grouping of 4 years of the war between the states. And the area where I live, between Culpeper and Manassas, and just to the west of Washington, there's probably not a day that went by during the 4 years during which the war happened when somebody wasn't shooting at somebody or running away from somebody or dying. Mm-hmm. So not only is this a very old area, it is an area where a lot of angry things happened. Mm-hmm. So it often makes me wonder, as I've been thinking for the last couple of days, could it have been something like that?
Not only the Civil War, but the KKK, the Revolutionary War came up, if you're talking about what it did in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, that's where that happened.
Yep.
The triangle trade in New England.
Indeed.
Every country, this is not just see the Americas is so terrible. Every country has its black dogs in history, if you will, the things it is not proud of. So if we want to extrapolate, can we think that perhaps this is all of what has been going on in modern history that is starting to form something?
Well, the thought that came to me was that in order for people and places to move on out of the past, never forgetting it, of course, because when we forget it, as the famous saying goes, we're doomed to repeat it, something has to happen to open up the books, so to speak, to understand where we came from in order to be able to know where we're going. Mm-hmm. And considering that the storm basically washed all the way up the coast and affected every state along the U.S. East Coast and several that were inland much further than where you would expect a hurricane to have an effect, was affected. They either got the awful winds and the storm surges and the 10 and 15-foot waves, or they got incredible amounts of very heavy wet snow. And rain and wind cleanse, and snow tends to cover. So it might be possible that what was covered were areas that will have to do their thinking later on, and it's time to sort of lay fallow and ponder. But the rest of us who were founded in violence with the revolution, who had native tribes that were displaced by new settlers coming in, wars crisscrossing the area, that's old stuff, and it really needs to be reconciled before we can move on. And as you were saying earlier with the whole, 2012, people believing the world is coming to an end, I agree with you. I think they ran out of rock. Either that, or as a cartoon that I saw in one of the newspapers said, there are two carvers sitting there together working on the calendars, and one of them says to the other, why don't we just stop with December 2012? Everybody will freak.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
But nevertheless, there is a feeling right about now that something is shifting, something is changing. We're beginning to both understand ourselves better as a species, but also still fighting so hard to understand where we've been and how the good of the past applies and how the not so good of the past and the very dark of the past. How do we deal with that? How do we make up for it if we can? How do we learn from it so that we don't make those same mistakes again?
Now, the way this country is almost as bad as it was during the Civil War, a Republican and a Democrat can basically barely speak to each other without going for each other's throats. If we're coming back to that, is Mother Nature grabbing us and saying, stop being stupid?
I don't think it would be unlike her to do that, for sure. I saw something in the paper today that there are some clergy people especially in the New York, New Jersey area, but also in other parts of the country, who are trying to make the case that this hurricane was sent by God as a punishment for a very specific thing. And my feeling on that as a clergy person is, excuse me very much, God doesn't roll that way. We are past the Old Testament God of anger, and we have moved into the God of compassion, the God of bringing together. It makes no sense for God to be punishing an area or a whole region or whatever just because people are beginning to understand that love can have many definitions. I think that's a lesson we really seriously need to learn before we can move on as a species.
Makes a lot of sense to me. Sharon, I so much appreciate your calling. You've given us some wonderful things to start with.
I hope so. I'm glad I got a chance to call in tonight.
It's great. Thanks. Keep listening because we're going to be continuing the conversation.
Will do.
Okay, next in line we have Angela from Delaware. Angela, girl, are you in one piece?
I am in one piece, Corbie. Thank you.
You're welcome. Now, tell me how it was down there, because I know Wilmington was pretty awful.
Yeah, we were right in the line of the storm, and I thought it was going to be a lot worse for us than it was. I'm in fine shape. We had a lot of the wind, we had a lot of rain, but as the eye passed over, it actually, for a few hours was really, really calm. I let my 17-year-old walk 4 blocks to a friend's house thinking we were past the thick of it. But this storm was really unique. I mean, I'm not someone that is prone to anxiety. I'm not someone that's bothered by a lot. I've got a lot of Scorpio planets in my chart, and I'm just not afraid of much. I work in healthcare. I'm also a psychic and an intuitive, and so I see a lot of things, and I'm not afraid of much. But the level of anxiety that this storm brought for me personally was very, very strange. I mean, there was definitely a sense of, I would call it almost terrorism. I see the storm so similar to 9/11, but we saw it coming. You know what I mean? No one knew where it was going to hit, how it was going to hit, what was going to happen. And really, after it all got through, I mean, it still sort of ended up that way. I think where it did the most damage, people just had no idea that it was going to have the scope and reach that it had. It just, it's wild. It's wild. I'm still thinking through it a lot. I like a lot of what Sharon was just saying, what you guys were discussing on the call, because I do think that there's something to this really extreme kind of, I would call it sort of a calling up of energy. I agree with you that there's been such a divisiveness for a few years leading up to this election. It's been just downright ugly. And the unity that this storm has brought is really helping. But to me, it feels like it's been kind of a function of just a lot of really strange energy kind of coming to fruition.
The fact that it came is, to me, astonishing. We're not equipped for this up in the Northeast. My bestest buddy from high school is out in San Diego. She's lived out in California now for decades, and I keep saying, I wouldn't live there. Y'all have earthquakes. We got blizzards, but we can at least prepare for a blizzard. And she countered with, yeah, but once the earthquake is done, it's done. You don't watch it coming at you for 5 days. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure which one's better.
I grew up in California.
Like the Monty Python. Pardon?
Sorry. I grew up in California.
Say it again?
I've been through a number of earthquakes. And there were actually some components of the thunder from the storm that felt like earthquakes. So this storm I would say is much worse than going through any earthquake I've ever been through.
Mm-hmm. Okay. If you are willing to hold on, my dear, we have to go to break, but I really want to continue this conversation. For those of you just coming in, this is Empower Readings with Corbie Mitleid. Tonight on Empower Radio, we are doing Superstorm Sandy. What did she do? What did she mean? Where do we go from here? We will continue this conversation on the other side of the break.
Welcome back to Empower Readings with Corbie Mitleid. Your calls are next at 248-809-3475. 248-809-3475. Empower Readings on Empower Radio. EmpowerRadio.com.
Welcome back to Empower Readings. This is Corbie Mitleid, and tonight on Open Mic Night, we're talking about that damn storm. How it affected us, what we think it means, and where do we go from here. And we're going to pick up again with Angela from Wilmington, Delaware. Angela also said that she has lived in California, and there were certain aspects of this storm that felt like an earthquake to her. Angela, for those people who have never been in an earthquake, what is the feeling with an earthquake? Is it just a sense in the gut? Is it the birds get quiet? What is it?
For me, when I said that, it was actual physical qualities of the storm. So I've been in earthquakes where they've been sudden and jarring, where it feels almost like the plates have shifted literally and the ground has shifted under your feet. I've been in earthquakes where it feels like the ground is rolling slowly for 30 seconds. So they can have very, very different qualities. With Superstorm Sandy, I think that it was the thunder, and it felt like it was at such a below-the-earth level that it literally felt like my bed was shaking, 2 a.m. when the wind and the storm came through. I mean, it felt very much like an earthquake. And it, as I said earlier, I'm not prone to anxiety. And it was one of those things where I thought, my God, is this more than a hurricane? Is there something more going on here? Is the earth going to crack open? It really felt like that. And we did not get the brunt of it, as you know.
Yeah. So you liked some of what Reverend Sharon was talking about. What's your take? Is Mother Nature trying to tell us something? Is it just all of the emotional and karmic slime coming up for cleansing? What is?
I would go a little more with B. I don't subscribe to any kind of a punishment mentality, although I believe in karma. I don't think that the earth or God is a punishing one in that regard. I've had an interesting thing come up, a bunch of things come up that I'm still kind of processing. I've had a number of clients for my psychic and intuitive business call me in the last few days that have strange spirits that have sort of appeared over the last 5 days for them. And I'm still trying to piece all of that together. It definitely feels like something at all kinds of levels was shaken up with this storm, whether that's karmic sludge, whether it's just, energy, all kinds of things. I think more and more will reveal itself over the next few weeks, really what was brought up by the storm.
So how does somebody, let's go from the universal to the personal. So let's say someone was affected by the storm. Maybe it's like my friend in Seaside Heights who lost everything. Maybe it's someone who, by the grace of whoever, escaped anything. How do they internalize and make the storm useful so that it isn't just a capricious act of an uncaring universe, but, okay, if I agreed to be here during this storm, it must have meaning for me. How can they take whatever happened and turn it into anything positive?
It's a good question. If they're having a hard time looking internally, hopefully they're noticing externally what's going on. The community building, even some of the political bridges, that are being built as a result of this. So if they can't find something at the moment internally, hopefully externally is helping them.
What can you do if your world has been so turned upside down, obliterated? How do you make it from moment to moment to moment? What would you tell someone who came to you?
Find ways to get grounded. That's what the earth needs right now, is more grounded people. So whatever that means to the person, however that means, to bring them down off of their anxiety ladder or just feel a little bit more down to earth. Whether it's gratitude, whether it's prayer, helping a neighbor, whatever that is.
Would you tell people, run, don't walk, get away from the low ground? Or would you tell people, don't run until you have your equilibrium back? Because I know a lot of people are... Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I'm minded of people in New Orleans. Some people fled to Houston and never looked back, and some people said, I have to go back. I know Pontchartrain is below sea level, but that's where I am. That's where I can find me. So how do people make a decision like that? What do you tell them to do?
Listen to their intuition. They're going to make the best choice for themselves. You know, some people belong there, some people don't. And I think the best thing that people can do for themselves is really listen to themselves on what's best for them.
That might be one of the biggest gifts from Sandy, is to get us shaken out of our everyday numbness, to start thinking about what really matters. It could be the big shake-up, wake-up we needed.
It could be.
Angela, I appreciate your calling and sticking with us. I am glad that you were not badly flattened. Our best to all of your folks in Delaware. Let's hope that everyone is back on their feet soon and whole.
Thanks, Corbie. Same to you and yours.
Okay, take care.
We have
Marianne from upstate New York next. Marianne, are you with us?
Yes, Corbie, it's Mary, and nice to speak with you tonight. Where I live is on the southern shore of Lake Ontario, pretty much dead center, and the warnings were very dire. We were really concerned, particularly because of the lake waves. I went out and videotaped it before the storm hit and then after. The whole idea of the atmosphere, it was really, really charged. I mean, I'm very used to the lake. I spend a lot of time there, and our mutual friend Ted Silverhand told me that this is a sacred spot, and it really feels that way. So I was paying very close attention. But the real point that I wanted to make was to tell you about something that happened a year ago. Every November in Canandaigua, New York, there is the Treaty Day, which commemorates the only treaty that's never been broken between the United States and the Six Nations. And what happened that night was that the safekeeper of the Onondaga, Warren Lyons, was speaking, and he is very much a person who has for decades now been involved in trying to get people to recognize the threat to the ecology. And when you have these treaty days, everybody comes. It's, there's a powwow. It's great. And there were a lot of families there. And as he was speaking about what was to come and talking about prophecies, suddenly a baby cried. And he said, I'm glad to hear that voice, but I have to say, for that child, it's going to be very hard. And I think that what Native people have been saying, continue to say, is that everybody has to take notice. This is just not going to stop. It is fully going to accelerate. And this has been going on in terms of people writing and speaking out, particularly here in New York, where we have so much, so many threats to the environment. I'm thinking of fracking just as one, but all the problems we've had with water. And the Onondaga in particular are very clear on what they want and what they care about. Of course, cleaning up the lake in Syracuse. And people just don't want to listen. Well, maybe now they'll listen. I think with Bloomberg coming out and saying what he did today, he's a pretty hard-nosed politician, but he's realistic. And if this isn't a warning that people will heed, I don't know what they will heed. I really don't know. I can't even imagine.
For those
it's all there.
For those people who didn't hear what he had to say, can you go over that?
Oh, sure. He discussed what most of the audience already understood, that the crisis was here now, and that it would accelerate, but there was work to be done. And the whole idea behind Native philosophy is that you do for the seventh generation. He's in his 80s, so he's standing up there talking about it. He said, it's not for us. and have the baby cry the way that it did at that moment was heart-stopping. It really was. And, you know, he was an elder speaking to the community saying, well, here we are. What are we going to do for those who come after us? What do we, it's our job, what are we going to do? And with the understanding that we had to do something and that everybody had a part to play. So mine is teaching, of course. So I try very hard to get that across to students. And you can see one of the really good things to say here is that young people in school now are very open compared to what they were 20 or 30 years ago when I started teaching. It's just a whole different mindset. And that gives me a lot of encouragement. They'll say to, for example, why shouldn't people be allowed to marry if they love each other? Why would they not be allowed? That's the kind of thinking that many of them have, which is so different from their own parents. So I think it's hopeful, but, you know, I do think at my age, 58, I think about the young people in my family, the babies I know who are just being born. What are we doing for them? It's not so much about us, but what are we doing for them? So that was really the thrust of what he had to say. He's so eloquent, I can't even hope to try to get it across. But it was in essence, wake up, and now what do we do next? So he's a faith keeper. He's been saying it for a very, very long time, as have so many others.
Well, let's hope that we finally wake up to do it. I have found what my buddy Sharita, lexigrammist, said, and her thoughts on Hurricane Sandy. And Marianne, listen to this and tell me what you think. It's a pure 8-name expression that brings plenty of learning from the experience, the requirement to be patient, utilize wisdom, and respond with stability. The 8 brings karmic energies into play, and the words that she got from Hurricane Sandy. Yes, as she is unheard, she sends a sure crash in riches as she drains riches. Yes, she is in a hurry as she ruins areas and haciendas. Yes, she is a hindrance as she is a nuisance. Yes, she sends a sure disarray crusade. Yes, she is an unstead, uneasy, scary, hard ride, unseen in years. That's the thing that I love about lexigramming. Every single one of those words you can get from Hurricane Sandy.
Wow. Well,
it is as... Pardon?
Sorry. I was going to say, 8's never been my favorite number, but I can see it. It's one thing, too. I don't think it's an accident that this happens. So I know that it's hurricane season, but it's very late in the season. And as they said, it didn't go into the S's until fairly recently. To be this far into the alphabet in naming shows you a lot right there. But it's so close to Samhain. I personally felt that very clearly. In fact, the whole day yesterday was sort of an anticlimactic feeling compared to what had come before for the days before. And so that's, and I just taught the Wheel of the Year. So that it felt very much like that was a punctuation. Here it is. Here, pay attention. And I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if the ancestors were trying to get it across to us in that way. Not at all.
Well, it's the time of the year when they say the veil is thin. So if they were ever going to be able to reach out and shake us by the shoulder, it would be now.
There's some stubborn people out there, and they needed shaking. But I don't know. I had a conversation just today with a new friend who is a Republican, and someone who his take on it was that We just simply had to move our resources more effectively to help New York. And I thought, not really. That's not all that we need to think about. I think there's a rebuilding possibility here too. It's horrible that so much has been swept away, but maybe there is ways to do things more intelligently. We shouldn't be building on beaches the way we do. There was a lot of concern that people would not have the cottages. I mean, so to this point, people have houses very, very close to the water, and they, the surge was high, and the beach erosion is significant. It could have been very different, and they don't belong there. They really don't belong there. Anyway, that's just my opinion.
Well, you've given us an awful lot of food for thought. Marianne, if you were going to reach out and tell the people who are still shaking in their boots how to get themselves settled and grounded again, what would you tell them?
Oh, I feel so fortunate that I was lucky in this way to have been spared. And I think maybe if people might be mired in why me, and it isn't personal. It's not personal, and it just takes a lot of strength to reach out to other people and hope that you can. I mean, this whole idea of community, people will start to scoff and say, oh, this is political, and people are forming alliances at the moment. I don't think so. This feels like 9/11 did, when people actually pulled together and did things to support each other. If we could do more of that, I mean, you're seeing it in the streets of New York. People are giving free rides to shelters in cabs. Who ever heard of a New York City cab driver giving anything for free, ever?
True.
But,
True.
This is the kind of thing that is happening. And if we can concentrate on that and feel empowered by it, it's not much, but it's a lot. Don't you think?
It's a step in the right direction. It helps for those people who say, oh, people never change. Now, I admit there are stories about people who are taking advantage, like the guy who's a parking attendant who just fired up all of the cars in his garage and was charging people $5 a shot to charge their phone. At the same time, on Facebook, there was a wonderful picture of someone who had a power strip. They had power, and they just put it out there with an extension cord and said, "Here, charge your phone." So is everybody all going to be love and light? Not.
No.
But it is the one thing that I will say, the fundamentalists are very much about choosing side. Are you on the side of the light, or are you on the devil's side, and blah, blah, blah. But in a sense, there are sides. Even if you think that we are all in this together, the sides are, how do you want to walk your talk? Do you want to see it as merely a chance to make a little extra money? Or do you want to see it as a chance to ease the energy of the world that is so fragile and in such pain? Those are the sides you need to decide. Where are you?
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
Marianne, thank you so much. Am I going to see you this weekend over in Buffalo?
Maybe. I've been toying with it. I should come in and see you and Ted and Brenda for sure. And
okay.
I've missed you all, so it will be. I've always got drama.
Of course. That's why we love you. All right. Well, if you can make it out to Buffalo this weekend, we're going to be doing our usual at the Hearthstone, so it'd be good to see you.
Yes, I will. I will be thinking about it. I've got a birthday party to go to, so that might be a possibility. Okay, take care.
All right. Good to talk to you.
Bye-bye.
All right. Some of the other stuff that I wanted to show you with stuff from Sharita. She said, I was looking back at Hurricane Katrina, which tells us it rake and unearthed in a true hectic inertia haunt. This carried the 10-name expression, the Wheel of Fortune, which brings a total death and rebirth energy with the potential for absolute destruction. Katrina alone comes to the 16, the Shattered Citadel. If you know your tarot, yes, the Tower card translates here. Sandy alone is the tarot card's 14, Movement and Challenge, depicting 14 warns of danger from accidents related to natural elements, i.e. fire, flood, earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes, tempests, and so forth. So as the 14-5 is a number of the masses, I do very much see this girl to be one that shouldn't be taken lightly, whether you're richer or poorer or anywhere in between. But I really do feel many will be unprepared. This very much is fitting into the turn of environmental things that strongly impact the USA and the unexpected events unfolding in our homeland as the retrograde transit of Uranus in our 4th house continues. This will be one of many severe weather-related episodes to affect this country over the next couple of years. Now, Sharita is not a doomsayer. She is one of the most positive, without being glurpy purple angel people that I know. But she is very realistic. And I agree with her. This is only the beginning. Whether it is global warming, whether, like that other guy thought in the beginning of the program, it's just a cycle we're going through. We have to be ready for this. We have never had a year like they had the 19th century, which was the year without a summer, when they literally had snow in July and there was mass famine. But we're going to start seeing a lot more of this violent weather. So this is not to scare you. This is not to say, yes, it's the end of the world. But what I would recommend is that you hold on to your life lightly. And when I say that, I'm talking about the attitude of gratitude for everything you have. You know, a hot shower, the ability to make coffee in the morning. Realize that for hundreds of years we did not have this. This is a relatively recent gift to us. And the more you can simplify your life, the more you're going to be able to roll with the punches, or roll as the ship's deck rolls, if you will. I'm not quite a prepper. Preppers are people who say, yes, it's Armageddon, and get 2 years of food, and get your bullets, and get ready to, defend your house from aliens, the government, and whoever else. But what I am saying is it wouldn't hurt for you to learn how to do a little bit less with modern conveniences. The old saying, that people used for years and they worked perfectly well. It's not as important right now as, as to why, whether it is God, whether it is the angry ancestors, shaking their fists at us, whether it is having to make up for all of the death and destruction on land, whether it's Civil War, Revolutionary War, anything else. Why the glass of milk fell off the table isn't as important as who's going to clean it up and don't step on the glass. And that's where we are right now. Whatever caused Sandy and her offspring, because there will be more, yeah, it'll be important eventually to figure that out, do what we can to mitigate it. But the most important thing is don't walk into this frightened. Remember, fear equals false evidence appearing real. Accept that you agreed to be here for some reason, and you're going to experience it along with the rest of us. And ask yourself, when the next one comes, how will I be? How will I support my family? How will I support friends? How will I reach out to the stranger who all of a sudden has nothing? This is the wake-up call. If anything, from Mother Earth, we are family. We got to be with each other. We have to help each other. We can't just be me, me, me anymore. So I'm going to leave you with this thought this week. Right now, who can you reach out to? Right now, do you know your neighbors? Right now, do you think about other people that you don't know and acknowledge them as family? Maybe that's part of why this happened and what the wake-up call is. Next week, we'll be back to a normal Empower Radio. I believe I'm having my friend Chef Christy on. She's been a guest before. We love her very much. And in the meantime, if you want to find out what I'm doing, you can always go to firethroughspirit.com. Find me on Facebook, Corbie Mitleid, or Fire Through Spirit. Or if you're interested in what we've talked about previously, go right to iTunes, type in Empower Readings, and you will find a year's worth of shows to listen to. So until we speak next time, remember that fear equals false evidence appearing real. And everyone's job now is to cross the bridge from fear to fearlessness and fly. And while you're crossing, give your arm to your neighbor. Help somebody across who doesn't know how to cross over into fearlessness. We all have to do it together. And I know we can. This is Corbie Mitleid. We'll see you next week.